Welcome to Working with Personas, some UX UI strategies. This is going to walk you through what a persona is and how we create them. So the first thing is, what is a persona? Personas are archetypal users whose goals and characteristics represent the needs of a larger group of users. So when we usually make this, it's going to be a 1 or 2 page document. This is a real basic example of persona. So describing things like goals, skills, attitudes, patterns, background information. You can give them quotes. You can give them some basic demographics and the environment in which a persona operates. So under what circumstances are they going to be using your product? Designers add a few fictional personal details to the description to make them realistic and context-specific details. So if I'm making a banking app, I want to include their financial. If I'm making something for the parks, I want to say how much are these people out enjoying the outside, anything like that. So relevant information for why they're going to be the person who is using your persona or using your product. Where did personas come from? So when we think of where these kind of came from, it helps to understand that they came way back from the 80s, informally developed by Alan Cooper in the early 1980s as a way to empathize with and internalize the mindset of people who would eventually use the software he was designing. Alan Cooper interviewed several people among the intended audience of a project he was working on and got to know them so well that he pretended to be them as a way of brainstorming and evaluating ideas from their perspective. This method acting technique allowed Cooper to put users front and center in the design process as he created software. As Cooper moved from creating software himself to consulting, he quickly discovered that to be successful, he needed a way to help clients see the world from his perspective. So when personas came out in the 80s, Alan Cooper kind of developed that idea. You have to think the early 80s in computers, they weren't thought of from the user who was going to be sitting in front of the computer working. Very early computers, a lot of times you had to know what you were doing in order to even sit down and start working. A person couldn't just sit down and figure it out. You already had to kind of have that high-level understanding of computing, high-level education to even work on a computer. You had to be really, really smart. So the idea of like, hey, I'm going to make software and I want people to use it. So what are they going to see? How can I make it so that a person can sit down and just start working without having to learn a bunch of stuff before they even get going? So why are personas important? Deep understanding of the target audience is fundamental to creating exceptional products. Personas help the product team find the answer to one of the most important questions is, who are we designing for? By understanding the expectations, concerns, and motivations of target users, it's possible to design a product that will satisfy users' needs and therefore be successful. The most important part of personas are empathy. We are trying to get empathy for the person who is going to be using our product, who's going to be using this interface. When we build empathy, it's that core value. Designers want to make something as good for people who are going to use it. If it's not good for them, if it's not answering the questions, it's not fulfilling their needs, your product has failed. Personas help designers create understanding, and thanks to personas, we can gain a perspective similar to the users. Creating personas can help designers step out of themselves and recognize that different people have different needs and expectations. By thinking about what the needs of a fictional persona, designers may be able to infer what a real person might need, and then identify with the user that they're designing for. The more designers engage with a persona and see them as real, the more likely they will be able to consider them during the design process and want to create the best product for them. It also helps to provide direction for making design decisions. So rather than saying, hey, listen, we do it because I think it looks good, my design looks good, therefore it wins, you're actually saying, well, this is helping the user. So instead of saying, I think the send button should be bigger, it says, since our primary persona, Carolyn, is always on the go, she needs bigger tap targets in the app to be able to send an email without eye strain. So if you're thinking about what your user needs, is my user using this on the phone all the time? Is my user older? Is my user younger? How can I make design decisions that help them? Personas also help prevent common design pitfalls, such as self-referential design. Self-referential design happens when designers Design as if they are making the product only for themselves, when in fact the target audience is quite unlike them. So if they say, I know all about this, therefore I don't have to explain things, where maybe your target audience is kind of new into whatever you're making, so maybe they need a little bit more explanation. You don't want to do self-referential design. They also prevent against an elastic user. An elastic user is a generic user, which means different things to different people. Designing for an elastic user happens when decisions are made by different stakeholders who may define the user according to their convenience. So an elastic user being somebody that, what they want changes over time depending on who's working on it, where we said, yes, we think this feature is important, and down the road someone says, well, we forgot to design for that feature, so it probably wasn't that important. They're changing what the user wants somewhere along the way. Personas can help communicate research findings. Most designers work in multidisciplinary teams, which have team members with varying expertise, experience, and points of view. All team members should be on the same page in terms of design decisions. Personas encapsulate the most critical information about users in a way that all team members and stakeholders can understand and relate to. If you're working in the UX UI industry, you may have reams and reams of research and information, and that's a lot for people to look at and read through. Personas can kind of distill all of that research down into really easy to read, easy to understand, manageable chunks that somebody can think about while they're designing and while they're making these products, and say, oh yes, I'm designing for this person, as opposed to I'm designing for this 50-page report. Characteristics of a good persona. Personas reflect real user patterns, not different user roles. Personas aren't fictional guesses at what target users think. Every aspect of a persona's description be tied back to real data observed and researched. Personas aren't a reflection of roles within a system. So the most important thing with personas that we may not really get to in a classroom setting, but that are hypercritical when you are actually working as a UX UI designer, is that there is research happening prior to the development of these personas. You're watching your users work through a product. You're talking to your user. What does your user need? What do they want? What would they like to see? What are their frustrations and concerns? How can this product that you're developing help them in their everyday life, or help them in this current situation in their life? So the persona focuses on the current state, how the user interacts with the product, not the future, how they will interact with the product. You have to look at it. If you're doing research, you're watching them, how they're interacting with the product now, not what we think they will do maybe. A persona is context specific. It's focused on the behaviors and goals related to a specific domain of a product. So it has to be specific to what you are working on. So what are the 5 steps to creating a persona? 1, collect all the information about your users. So number 1, you need all the data. Conduct user research and understand the target's audience mindset, motivation, behavior. The most accurate personas are based on actual field research. You need the research in order to create a really worthwhile persona. Once you have your research, identify behavioral patterns from research data. Go through the data and find what are these things that we keep coming up with over and over and over again. So map each interviewee or real-life user attributes. Identify trends. What's something that we see cropping up over and over and over again? If you see a problem, if you see a desire, if you see a need that keeps popping up, well, the more it pops up, the more that you realize this is a critical issue that needs to be included in our personas. Number 3 is create personas and prioritize them. Next, it's important to assemble a persona's description around behavioral patterns. The researcher's task here is to describe each persona in such a way that it expresses enough understanding and empathy to understand the users. During this step, it's best to avoid the temptation to add a lot of personal details. 1 or 2 bits of personality can bring a persona to life, but too many details will be distracting and will make a persona less credible as an analytical tool. If you have more than 1 persona, it's good to define a primary persona, the most relevant, and follow the rule, design for the primary, accommodate the secondary. So who is your primary persona? Who is the person you're trying to reach? But don't forget all the secondary personas who are also going to be working on and working with your product. Find scenarios of interaction and create persona documentation. Personas have no value in and of themselves. They become valuable only when tied up to a scenario. A scenario is an imagined situation that describes how a persona would interact with a product in a particular content to achieve its goals. Scenarios help designers understand their main user flows by pairing the personas with the scenarios. Designers gather requirements, and from those requirements, they create design solutions. So scenarios need to be written into your persona and in your persona's perspective. So if you had multiple personas, let's say you're doing that banking app again, what happens when the person going onto your banking app forgets their password? How are they going to handle it? Does this happen often? Is there a way they can save it? Is that a security risk? Those are things you need to think of. That's a scenario that, I'm using this banking app. It could also be, well, I have multiple accounts. Can I see them all at once when I log into my bank? Yes or no? Put them in that scenario. Do I want to see that? How do they want to see any of those things? Putting your person into a scenario and walking through why they would be using it, what you think they would like to see, and how that fits into their lifestyle. Generally, when creating a document, you should include the following information: a persona name. Obviously, it's not a real name. It's a fake name. A photo, demographics, gender, age, location, marital status, family, goals and needs, frustrations or pain points, behaviors, bits of personality, like a quote, slogan that captures a personality. So if we look at this persona, you can look up personas online. You can just do a quick Google search of personas. And you can take a look and see, what is out there. If I look at this, I understand that this is a persona for somebody designing wearable fitness technology, like a Fitbit, Apple Watch, that type of thing. So if I look at this, I can say, oh yes, this is Clark. He's 26, software developer, lives in California. He's kind of a computer nerd. That's his archetype. So you got kind of a guy who's a little bit techie. And motivations. He's motivated by incentives, achievement, and power. He's a little bit social. He's wanting to grow. So what can I use in my wearable tech? So if he's motivated by incentives and achievements, maybe my wearable tech can have little goals that he can meet. So frustration, unfamiliar with wearable technology. He's not used to it. He doesn't know what to buy. He doesn't want to have to enter a lot of things. It should be done for him. So I can see all this, and I start to think about, okay, what do I need to bring into my wearable tech that's going to be attractive to Clark as a user? If I'm designing a wearable fitness tracker, I can now think about, okay, he's frustrated with how, he's not familiar with it. He's trying to do research, but there's so much out there. How can he find what he's looking for? He doesn't have a lot of time. He's a pretty bright guy. He's kind of a techie guy, so he could pick up on it, but we still need to make it approachable. So Aaron wants to track his mood, happiness, sleep quality. And now I can start to think about all the things that I need to build into this product to really meet my persona. And the last step of personas is sharing your findings and obtain acceptance from the team. So once you have your personas, you're going to socialize them. You're going to talk through your personas with other users and say, hey, this is a persona I've come up with. Does it make sense? Is there something I'm missing? And starting to talk about them like they're real people. If I go back to this previous slide with Clark, if I start to treat him like a real person, he's not. It's just a fake persona. But at the same time, now I'm thinking about this person, and I can think about how am I going to design for him, and how am I going to make the best technology that he's going to really be like, yes, this is the one. This is the one I want to use. This is great, and I'm going to tell my friends about it. 4 different perspectives on personas. So for our purposes in this class, we're not going to have a lot of detail, and we're not going to have a lot of research. It's difficult to get a lot of research when you're not really making a real product. But let's talk about the couple different personas. A goal-directed persona cuts straight to the nitty-gritty. It focuses on, what does my typical user want to do with my product? What is the end goal that we are trying to get to? You've already did it. As soon as you've got a lot of research backing you up. A role-based persona. It's also goal-directed and focuses on behavior, so you're giving roles to different people. You can read these on your own. I'll post this slideshow. Engaging personas are both goal and role-directed. They're well-rounded. Again, you're going to need a lot of research to do an engaging persona, and you're really creating a nice 3D rendering, fully thought out, that feels like a real person. Personas examine the emotions of the user, their psychology, their background, and makes it really relevant. Fictional personas. This is kind of the one we have to do when we don't have a ton of data. Maybe you're working in a place where you haven't gotten a lot of data. You're a student who really isn't making a real product. This is your first time working with personas. You're going to land in the realm of fictional persona. A fictional persona does not emerge from user research, unlike the other ones. If you're working for UX UI Studio, you're going to get your research first. It emerges from the experience of the design team, which is you, the designer. It requires the team to make assumptions based upon past interactions with the user base and products to deliver the picture of what perhaps typical users look like. There's no doubt these personas can be deeply flawed, and there are endless debates on just how flawed. You may be able to use them as an initial sketch of the user's needs. They allow for early involvement with the users, but they should not, of course, be trusted as a guide. So the fictional personas are a great jumping off point, particularly if you have small budgets, you're a student, that, hey, I can still use and work with personas to start working on my product. I can start thinking outside of myself and what I want and what I need, and put myself in somebody else's shoes and figure out, okay, what does this person need? What would my users need if I really start thinking critically about my product? And this will get you further than just designing for, oh, this looks good, this looks nice, is how are people going to use it? What are the features they're going to look for in my product? Fictional persona. Start thinking about who my user is. Who is going to go to this site? Why are they going to go to this site? What is the information they're going to look for? And start thinking about different pain points. And then you can start thinking about, well, who is my primary user and who's my secondary user? That's an excellent way of getting a primary persona and a secondary persona, is thinking about what would maybe, if I'm working on my website, what's 80% of the traffic coming to this site? What are they looking for? That's my primary persona. And those other 20% who maybe have somehow landed here on a Google search, they were looking for something, my site happened to pop up. What are they looking for? How can I solve the needs that they're also looking for that may not be the primary focus of my site, but maybe something they've landed on that's interesting to them? And also getting into their head. What are they going to be frustrated by? What are they really truly looking for? So when they land on your site, starting to come up with those questions, those answers, and those scenarios as well will help you get through writing your persona. All right, for your persona assignment, you've been given this template, and you're going to create your 3 personas. So what you need to fill in and what you need to think about, and these can change a little bit depending on the site you've picked for your project, but again, you're going to give it a name. You're going to throw a photo in there. You can give them a nice quote. Write their background. What is their background? And how does this kind of relate to the site that you're making? What are the behaviors? And this can be things like their shopping behavior. This can be how much technology do they use. This can be how much time are they spending on the internet. Any of those types of behaviors that may be relevant to the site that you are working on. And their objectives and goals. That's the next thing. Objectives and goals. Why did I go to this site? What am I looking for? What am I trying to achieve? Am I trying to just gather more information? Am I looking for a new bank? Am I looking for a new place to shop? Am I looking for my favorite new online shoe store? Those are all types of things that are objectives and goals. What are the ideal features? So if I'm on your site, what are the things I want to see? Pick those top features that I would like to see as a persona. If I'm this persona, what are the things I'm really coming here for? What do I want to see? Do I want to see easy checkout or guest checkout in an online platform? Would I like to see a big list of articles where I can read more information? Scenarios. Put your people into those scenarios like I talked about in the lecture. They're super important. So if I'm on your site, and I'm not finding the information I'm looking for. Or I've done a ton of Google searches and I can't find what I'm looking for. How does this help? Those are scenarios. You don't have to solve for them, but you're trying to think of, okay, this is the scenario this person is, or that this person is in. What am I doing to help solve this scenario? And then frustrations and concerns. Those can be pretty much anything. What are some of the frustrations and concerns that these users might have? So again, we'll go back to the online banking thing. I'm frustrated by my online banking because it makes me change my password every 30 days and I can't remember my password. I'm frustrated by my online banking because it logs me out too fast without any warning. Those are frustrations and concerns. Or how do I know that this site is secure if I'm going to give them payments? Like I'm worried that my credit card information is going to get stolen. How do I feel secure when I'm checking out on your site? Those are all frustrations and concerns. There's no right or wrong necessarily. You want to make sure this is relevant and useful to you as you build your site. As you start to think about these people and these personas, you're going to start thinking about features, and different ways that you can solve problems. How do I make this site better? How do I make this product better? How am I solving these problems with my design? Not just making a beautiful design, but making a design that solves problems, making a design that people want to come back to again and again. That's a big goal of web designers and web developers, is making that site sticky. I want to make a site that you're going to, and a product that you're going to go onto and use all the time. It's your number one, it's your fallback. So personas are a way that we can jump off and really get into that and build useful products. So thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one.